All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this special session on pricing innovation in retail. My name is Barak. I'm the VP Growth here at Quicklizard, and I will be your host for today. So today, we wanted to cut through the AI noise. So really, what does AI-powered pricing really mean for US retailers in 2025? And how can we really drive real measurable business value? I have today with me two fantastic colleagues. I have Matt Schiffman, who's our VP of Pricing Strategy in the US. He brings years of experience at BCG and now works with us on our most forward-thinking retailers stateside. On the other side, I have Igal, who's our product manager here at Quicklizard for many years. He leads the development of our next-gen pricing engines that are really designed for scale and agility. So right before we kick off, quick note, our Q&A session is open throughout, and we have our AI pricing experts online and ready to answer any of your questions in real time. Please don't hesitate to drop any of your thoughts or ask anything as we go. We will surely answer them. If you don't mind, gentlemen, let's dive right in. So AI-driven pricing. Let's start with the big picture question. There's been a lot of noise around AI pricing and AI in general. Matt, in your take and what you've seen in the past few years, what does AI-driven pricing actually mean in 2025? And is it just hype?
Thanks, Barak, and hello, everyone. So I'm very excited to be part of the webinar. When we talk about AI-driven pricing, pricing has always been an analytically sophisticated domain. When I was in grad school, I was studying econometrics at U Chicago. No one called it data science or AI or even machine learning back then. It was econometrics, but that's been a part of the field for decades. When we talk about AI pricing, people usually mean a mixture of what at this point is called classical machine learning and Gen AI. So these days, you need transparency. You need machine learning to action to figure out what will happen with the price change. But Gen AI is the new thing. It's the much more exciting thing, and it's progressing incredibly quickly. It allows for more responsiveness, faster cycles, but you have to be very careful with using Gen AI in enterprises anywhere, but especially in pricing. Most Gen AI pilots fail. I was reading a study the other day that something like 3% of pilots are put into production. So you have to be very, very tactical around where you're using Gen AI and how to make sure it sticks. One example from a case, I was working with a client, they were a convenience store. They'd done a whole big Gen AI strategy visioning project. They thought to themselves okay, here's the future of Gen AI. I show up 9 months later. I come up with a very simple use case of Gen AI, which was literally just understanding some scraped data, interpreting it using ChatGPT essentially. And that was the first real use case that actually entered production. And so those tactical use cases that we're seeing within the world of Gen AI and pricing that are actually sticking. It's using it for BI, it's using it for explaining decisions, it's using it for speeding up implementations, often fixing the product catalog. It's those tactical little things that start to build out a more robust pricing function that are really moving the needle in 2025.
Cool. So we're really seeing, from your graduate days, the move from theoretical to much more of the practical and really starting in the tactical level with these retailers. Super interesting. Igal, so from a product standpoint, what's under the hood? So how does that actually look like, and what makes a pricing engine truly AI powered?
Thanks, Barak. Also happy to join, and thank you for having me. So from my perspective as a product manager here, an AI pricing engine is about making the right call at the right moment. It constantly reads signals, sales trends, inventory levels, competition movements, market events, etc. The main idea is to seal it or act before the window closes. Pricing with AI is tougher than than other use cases because every change is public. It affects margins instantly. Faces constant market scrutiny. That's why models must adapt in real time, not just act as a static strip. Although speed and accuracy matter, trust does too. So retailers need to understand why a price changed, not just see the final bottom line. And if you blindly follow AI, you might boost profits for the short term, but you might damage your perception and market position in the long run. So in my perspective, AI should enable your pricing strategy, not be the strategy. To point a use case, looking back at my earlier days here at Quicklizard, a customer of ours used one of our most powerful modules called competitor sensitivity, which in a nutshell provides an output of whether or not a competitor price affects our sales or your sales. The customer using this module strategically achieved a 45% increase in profit simply because his benchmark was now the relevant competition and not the entire market. So again, this enabled them to actually use these AI modules and change their prices without disrupting their market position.
Okay, super interesting, guys. So I think, kind of to sum up, I would say, so a beginning of AI pricing starting to creep in pricing strategies, really using it on a tactical level, and really trying to gain the customer's trust before we roll out it to be the entire strategy. Amazing. So Matt, going back to you in terms of the pricing architecture for US retailers, and I think, that's kind of your bread and butter. So you work closely with American retailers. What are most of them doing today in terms of their pricing maturity? What needs to change, and kind of where are they situated right now?
That's a great question, Barak. So broadly speaking, I would describe it as with big ambitions, but trouble actioning. We're going to see common gaps. That's true throughout every enterprise that's considering anything with data, which is legacy systems, siloed data, slow decision cycles, often trying to almost get ahead of themselves. I had a client, for example, they were in the apparel space. They were trying to build these cutting edge machine learning models. It was for a promo engine, but key data existed only on a vendor's third-party ecom database, not accessible to anyone. They were essentially trying to build a model on noise because the data they needed was in the system they didn't access, and they were basing this all off of a high-touch process that involved dozens of arcane spreadsheets getting passed around the team. And ultimately, they were unable to realize their ambition until they fixed all those core legacy problems. More broadly, in terms of pricing maturity, it's been a crazy half decade. You start with the COVID increases. We got waves of inflation, rising interest rates, more recent tariffs. So the upside of this, at least from a pricing perspective, is there's been a lot of price changes. Consumers expect them more, but are also getting angrier with what they see in the market. It means that the execs are ready for pricing to be a core component of margin strategy, to be a key strategic layer, but it means it needs to be more than just a quarterly category reset. In some of the more sophisticated companies that I've worked with, they're starting to think about experimentation and targeted strategies. You saw a lot of personalization in marketing over the last decade, but more recently, you're starting to see some of that in the pricing space, especially more across the assortment versus across different customer bases. So think about strategies like varying prices by channel, having value-based pricing in parts of your assortment, competitive-focused pricing strategies, value-based pricing strategies, cost-based pricing strategies across the assortment, to better realize the overall strategy with this more targeted micro strategies. Now, at the same time, you've got to be careful. This leads to more governance, more cross-functional alignment needs, and generally increased need for sophistication to meet market demand.
Perfect. So I think that also perfectly aligns with your previous answer, right? We're moving from a theoretical into a practical. Execs are ready for pricing to be at the forefront. But the question is now, how do they actually implement that? And Yigal, I'll ask you that. So what challenges do US retailers face today in implementing these solutions?
So integration is usually the first hurdle. Connecting a pricing solution to an ERP or e-com system can be challenging and requires some data alignment. And then there's also what I've mentioned before, the trust. Shifting from human set prices to machine recommendations can feel risky. So we often start with a side-by-side comparison, aka A/B testing, to build confidence before going fully automated. Also, there's category complexity, which adds another layer of some challenge. because you face different behaviors in grocery, fashion, electronics. Each of these verticals behave totally different. Also, change management is a huge thing because you need to make sure the teams get full value from the tech, not always easy to change. And in the US specifically, promotions drive much of the pricing strategy. So we've designed our AI to work hand in hand with aggressive promo calendars instead of chasing them.
Amazing. Super interesting. So again, alignment on the issues, and how do we actually roll that out into the broader scope and the broader catalog of products. So Matt, I want to take you back a couple steps and talk a bit more strategically about the tariffs. So everyone's talking about tariffs today. They're coming in hot and fast, and I think some retailers are having issues on how to actually deal with them. So how should they approach these tariffs strategically? Is dynamic pricing a option for helping them mitigate that impact?
Yeah, I mean, Brock, you said some retailers, I think it's even every retailer, at least in the US, is struggling with tariffs, and even abroad. The US tariffs are impacting the price and the cost of goods up and down the supply chain. They're increasing landed costs, they're eroding margin, they're increasing upstream costs. So even for made in the USA goods, the ingredients of those goods can then impact the overall cost. And the question then becomes, what do you do with your price when your costs are changing in such a dynamic manner? Dynamic pricing is key here. That you're going to want to be able to rebalance your assortment and be very strategic. There can be multiple layers. The data side is very, very important here. You're going to want to understand what are your tariff-heavy goods. That could be at a SKU level. It could even be within shipments. If tariffs are changing over time, some of a single product is sourced from Vietnam and some from China, they're going to be facing different tariffs. So trying to understand the loaded impact at any point in time of tariffs, what you want to be passing on to your customers versus what you want to eat in terms of your own margin, is key. Layering in that, you want to understand what your competition is doing. If the competition is raising prices, there's a lot more leeway for you to either raise prices or potentially make a strategic shift and try and buy some share, try and drive volume by undercutting a competitor as they're raising prices. You need to be able to understand how tariffs are going to impact your costs, how those costs are then going to be passed on to consumers, and what you want your ultimate prices to be at a very, very flexible and dynamic speed. Frankly, like you have to almost be following the news full time to understand what are the latest tariffs, how are they going to impact me today, and so what should my prices be today? It means that, as I mentioned before, it can't just be a quarterly reset. It has to be a dynamic approach.
I really hear that data part burning, in your gut when it comes out. Nice to hear. Great. So we talked about, I think, a little bit about where we are today. I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about the next 12 to 18 months. What does that look like in terms of AI pricing? So besides shifting gears to the future, let's shift gears also internally. So Igal, this question will be for you. What trends do you feel should retailers be tracking in terms of AI pricing in the next 12 to 18 months?
So I think that AI assistants or agents will soon be a part of every pricing dashboard, and so decision makers can ask a question, get an instant, clear, data-driven answer. Which will enable them, again, not to just get an answer or see the results in a beautiful dashboard, but actually take action, like adjusting a price or scheduling a promotion or even changing the entire rule set. These agents will actually do that, and you will just need to approve it, and maybe in the future, not even that. So I think we'll see more real-time fusion of competitive cost and demand data. No more waiting for those weekly sessions and reports. You'll have more no-code environments and tools that will let these business users to just run their own scenarios without depending on any IT and get the results like in a flash.
So agentic AI, I think that's it's a term that we keep hearing. It's a term we keep hearing, and now to hear that creeping kind of its way back into pricing as well is super interesting. Matt, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think that anyone involved in technology and AI is excited where it's going to go. Within the next 12 to 18 months, AI is going to continue to improve. The enterprise applications are going to become more readily available, and their costs are going to continue to go down. I think layering in kind of where they can start to apply, it's piloting agents to assist with that mixture of like the strategic layer, the machine learning layer, the decision making layer. It for many retailers, they have teams managing prices, but focused on the KPIs. They're focused on the most important SKUs that drive the most business, that drive the customer's perception. Those are crucial. Those are by definition the most important SKUs. But as AI starts to become more sophisticated and these agents become capable of taking more action, the long tail is the first place to look towards them. You want to be able to, in the future, give them as much attention as KPIs, learn from how you're handling that portion of the portfolio, and start applying their own strategic judgment to the long tail, which right now for many retailers is, if not being ignored, at least not the main focus. We want to be able to directly translate strategic concerns into actionable pricing strategy. I've had clients where they warn me, the CEO might on a Friday afternoon come in and say, hey, Monday, we want to change our entire pricing strategy, or really the entire company strategy, to be more around generating inventory turn versus bottom line impact. Come up with a plan for that right now. And that translating the big level strategy, which AI is not, that's not a strong suit, to a tactical plan, can be a great use of agents. We're also going to be seeing lower cost of AI, and using that for things like A/B testing, promotional strategies. It's really just whenever there's something that is, you've been able to do yourself, but with the main focus, over the next 12 to 18 months, it's starting to experiment with how you could let an agent manage that for the parts that there's not the capacity to right now.
So pricing strategy equals company strategy. I like that. I think that's a good head one. I want to touch about something else you talked about. You talked about customer perception, and I think it's quite the hot potato today, and I think that leads us to our next version. I would say the U.S. in particular, the U.S. consumers are now more skeptical than ever. They feel a lot of the retailers are hiking prices, even if margins are tight. They still see that as unfair. How can pricing strategy really address this company consumer gap? Are there any tactics that you're familiar with from your vast, history of working with these types of clients that will help improve that perception while still protecting the company margins?
Yeah, it's a tough place to be right now. Like, rising prices are on the consumer's mind. You hear political pundits talking about how, this past election was decided on the price of eggs. What this means is price perception is key here. You need to be smart about, I mentioned earlier, the KPIs. What are your KPIs? What are the items that drive price perception? And understanding that within your catalog. This needs to be a mixture of AI, intelligence, business judgment. Figure that out. And crucially here, you want to be able to then understand what this price perception means for your portfolio. You don't want to just raise prices on KPIs. I've seen retailers try and do this. I had a client once. They had put together an elasticity model. It was trying to predict, what you should be doing. And surprisingly enough, this was in 2023. You just come off of COVID, price hikes, demand surges, and the elasticity model told them, you should just raise your price on every single product. That's going to increase your profit. And mathematically, like, that would have been true. Like, if they had done that, they would have had a great quarter. but at the same time eroded trust with customers and ruined their business over the next year. It really comes to when they were trying to figure out what to do, identifying, I talked earlier about the long tail. What are those SKUs that are less salient to people's mind, that have more room to move, and that can where you can move prices as those costs are increasing, where you can pass things on without damaging your own price perception. This can even vary product to product and competitor to competitor. So what I mean by that is sometimes you'll have a product where your competition is relevant to it, where they're moving prices. It's safer to move your own price because everyone in the market is. Sometimes it doesn't matter at all what your competition is doing, that you're known for that product. That's your thing. You need to be very careful, even if your competitors are moving it, their prices. So what it comes down to is, I talk about AI, I warn about AI, but you need to be very smart with AI to understand where it's safe to move prices. Typically, it's going to be the long tail. It's going to be items that are where you're sensitive to your competition and they're moving prices. And that's where you have to maintain your margin while potentially sacrificing it on those, KPIs that are driving price perception.
Interesting. So really taking it from the exec level of those sort of the blanket price hikes and really just taking it down to a more tactical approach and really looking at it from a consumer perspective without eroding your business or your margins. Interesting. Egot, this next one is for you. Pricing and shopper data. We see across the world, and I think especially in the US, these retailers and brands sit on mountains of raw data, but they're still struggling to make these fast decisions. How do you feel like this vertical can turn raw data into action without really overwhelming the business teams?
So what we do when we onboard a customer, we focus on three main pillars. One is structure, second is accessibility, and clarity. So the first thing we want to do is create a single source of truth from all these fragments of data. In the end, you have multiple areas to collect data from, and you need to organize them in one useful structure. Then we give the teams tools to act on it quickly. So we call it pricing triggers, like spotting a competitor price drop or a low inventory or maybe even a high spike in demand, etc. And then that allows you again to adjust these pricing rules quickly and not wait for like a daily cycle or maybe even a weekly cycle. The last thing, which is the clarity, which is highly important for many of our customers, if not all of them, is making the reasoning visible and easy to understand. So features like our decision tree that shows you step by step what exactly happened to that specific product, along with other built-in widgets and custom widgets, which we can also create for a specific user, allows these pricing managers to understand both the number, like the bottom line of the recommendation, but also the logic behind it.
I heard triggers, and I think for me, triggers is something that I love because I feel like that is an overarching theme for any type of raw data that you have. And I think that allows you to, I would say, clear the clutter, right? And utilize only triggers that you feel that are relevant for your type of business, whether it's in my fields or both of yours pricing. Matt, I see you kind of raring to go, so I'll let you have a stab here. Data, mountains of data, how can you help that or the teams that you're working with create fast decisions?
Yeah, at BCG, we used to talk about a concept called 10-20-70, that the business value came 10% from the algorithms, 20% from the data, and 70% from the peoples and process. The triggers is a great example of that. What matters is not certainly what the algorithm is telling you or what the data is saying. What matters is what you actually do about it. So it's making sure that you understand if, say, let's go back to tariff. There's a tariff that's coming through. Okay, so when how will it impact you? How will it affect you? And what are you going to do about it? It's making sure you have the processes that are built on the data and the intelligence that you're seeing to turn the mountain of data into actions. You having the right intelligence is essential there, and then having the organizational capacity, the strategic judgment to then say, okay, here's our strategy. When we see this number or this action, here is the process that we're going to do, and here's the decision that we are going to make to change something, to change a price, to change our position. This is what the actual impact of it will be. That's how you're going to be able to handle the data, how you're going to be able to handle the complexity of the modern business environment.
Love it. 10, 20, 70, everyone. Love it. Okay, so before we jump into this next section, I see some comments being made on the chat. Great, guys. Pile them on. We'll take them as we go, and I think also Matt and Ingo will have some time to answer these in the end. Let's play a fun game, gentlemen. Let's play start, stop, double down. So if you were a retail pricing or a category exec watching us right now, what's one thing you would start, something you would stop, and something you will double down on today in this ecosystem? Egon, let's start with you.
Start making more data-driven rather than gut feeling pricing decision in real time. Stop relying solely on your gut system, instincts. You're losing money, guaranteed. And double down, I'd say scale up the relevant AI pricing modules and sync them with promos and assortment.
Super cool. I like this game. Matt, your 2 cents here?
Sure. In terms of start, I'm sure we have a lot of pricing professionals in the audience. Make sure you're thinking strategically, view your role as essential to core strategy, defining pricing's role in your company's strategy, whether that's to drive traffic, to improve brand position, to improve cash flow. Think of yourself as part of the strategy team, not just a technical function. In terms of stop, I would say, stop making decisions on gut feel. Try to make sure that you're basing it off of hard data that you can then directly link to the core strategy to drive the business value. And then in terms of doubling down, you need transparency, you need machine learning and AI that can help you make those decisions. So start doubling down on where the AI can move the needle towards your strategic concerns and focus the technical efforts there.
Okay. Great. I'll add mine. No one asked me, but I'll add mine. I think you start moving from the strategical to the tactical in the world of AI pricing. I think you need to stop at the moment to being afraid of AI pricing and really start to embrace it on a tactical level, of course, with trust and the correct providers. And I will double down on the data. I think, God is in the details and the data is where you should find it. And I think, Igal, both of you mentioned the triggers. So don't drown in data. Find the triggers that are relevant for you and double down on them. Great. So we have some questions for the chat, as I just noted. Here's one for Matt. Matt, a lot of us here are dealing with inflation-driven pricing sensitivity. How can retailers raise prices where needed without damaging long-term customer trust?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when my answer earlier with the tariffs, I think a lot of that applies here. It's understanding what items drive price perception. It's understanding what your competitors are doing. It's having the data to action on it and moving prices strategically. It's also taking the customer on the journey with you. Whether it's experimenting with showing why, if tariffs are driving the price increases, if there's costs going up, it's being transparent. It's negotiating with suppliers to try and protect, keep your costs down, splitting the tariff costs with your suppliers. But ultimately, what has to come down to is understanding what is driving price perception, and being careful there about maybe losing some margin in some areas and trading it for margin in other areas.
Interesting. All right, great answer. Great question. Igal, we have one for you. So Igal, you mentioned integration with ERP and POS systems. Ooh, super technical. As a challenge for a retailer starting this journey today, what would you feel like is the practical first step to get AI pricing connected without having major disruption as much as possible with those systems?
I'd say generally the first thing a retailer should do when they're getting interested in using a pricing solution is getting their data structured and ready for digestion. It may seem trivial, but we've seen it oftentimes with retailers. This part can be one of the biggest challenges, as their data, again, is scattered in various systems, each focusing on different aspects of their business. So reviewing the data, truly understanding what can actually move the needle would take you a long way.
All right. So that was questions from the audience. Matt, do you have any kind of closing statements before we kind of wrap up? Just kind of one-liner?
Yeah, I guess the theme here of what I've been saying is that pricing is a core strategic lever, and that AI is the future of how to action on it at scale. So just constantly be thinking about, what is my company's strategy? What are the new tools that are emerging on the market that use AI that can help me increase my own leverage, that can increase my team's capacity, and that can let me make decisions that move the needle faster.
Yep, I think it's a really good summary. So again, we're gonna wrap up here. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Igal. Thank you, everyone watching and participating on the sidelines. We hope this started to shed some light on how AI-powered pricing is evolving, how to think about it strategically towards a tactical and operational in your business. This session is quite a commitment to us helping retailers lead through smarter pricing around the world. Stay tuned for more insights. Feel free to connect with any of us on LinkedIn. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye, everyone.